C'est au direct. Is it working? Hello everyone! Before we start, let's make sure that everything works. Can you hear me? I'm afraid that they've been seeing like the last 30 seconds and while I was getting ready. Well, when I will publish it on YouTube, definitely, I will make sure to cut that. Can you hear me? Yes, it is working. Okay, very well. So, hello everyone and welcome for another video of Love and Wargames. For this video, we will first of all have a little discussion because it's not going to be a recorded video that I have time to edit or everything. Here, the main idea is that you can put your questions in the chat and I will be able to answer them as we discuss. As you may have noticed, there has been a release of a new OrBats, Order of Battles, for all the factions of Dystopian Wars. These are the 3.03 OrBats, and all the factions have been made at the same level. That there are good and bad things about this. The good things is that all the factions have the same updated rules at the same time. That is extremely convenient. The less good thing is that can be a lot to digest, especially if you're a new player, and especially if you don't know like what to look at in the OrBats, like what has changed, etc. As we will see on the OrBats themselves, it is in blue text what has been changed. As we can see here, vulnerable stern. But sometimes you're like, okay, but what was it before? How does it impact my list building? How gameplay, everything. So we will have a look specifically to all of this and see how that goes. Again, if you have any questions at any moment, really feel free to ask and I will answer it as best as I can. Last thing that I will say before we start to have a look at these new rules and everything, and this allows people to start connecting. Last thing that I will say is that I'm not an expert on everything, and there might be some rule interpretation that I get wrong. Many of these new rules are literally that, new rules, to which we sometimes didn't discuss yet the new edge case that can appear, so there might be some points that are still in question. However, the rules are usually pretty clear. They are always going to the side of balance and uniformity, and this is really good. The boring gameplay have been nerfed, as we will see, mostly like having just one generator ship giving huge bubble of defensive buffs in a bubble around, and that made very static gameplay, which was not very interesting. So this will be a little bit less prevalent in the future, and many of the sub-factions had little tricks, some little rules extra, or little equipment that may give them extra flavor. And this we will have a look as well. Before we do that, we will first talk about generic changes that happened for every faction. There's not that many of them, but they are quite significant. To take this as an example, we will have a look at the Latin Alliance Order of Battle, which was released as a kind of like beta for the new rules some weeks ago. And so it's almost the same, but there have been some adjustments, and it is a very good place to have a look. First of all, let's have a look at this rule, Vulnerable Stern. This is going to be quite important when it does trigger, and but it takes it emphasizes again the mobility part of the game. Like it's a game of movement first of all, and this will really make it even further a game of movement. Indeed, what it says that shooting attack, not ramming attack, be careful, shooting attack that originate in the model's aft fire arc, so from the back, will gain especially devastating, which means that every explosive hit will count as 3 hits instead of 2. This is really good rule that can really boost your rear firepower. So this will help, first of all, the ships and the factions that have a lot of mobility, and they can, by maneuvering, go behind the enemy's ships, and this will also boost the ships or robots with unexpected arrival, which is a rule that has seen quite some changes, as we will see. But if you can just pop behind the enemy, of course this will help. And third of all, it will also boost strategic reserves, which is still a very good rule, as we will see once again. But there's been quite a few changes to popping behind the enemy line. But yeah, basically, if you are fast enough to go behind the enemy, you will gain devastating, and if you do at least 1 point of damage, which you should be able to do with devastating, it will provoke a navigation lock on the enemy after you start to roll all the dice and criticals, etc. If you don't make a navigation lock, you automatically inflict a navigation lock, which is good. It will not cause too much damage thanks to making twice the same critical, etc. But it's a little bit the same as magnetic in this sense. And as we can see here, if your attack already has the magnetic quality, you ignore the vulnerable turn. Which is sad because some magnetic weapons could use that. We think especially of the Gatling of the little flying robots of the Union. They could really use devastating because they can go in the rear of the enemy quite easily. But yeah, apparently they cannot. So that will really boost their gunnery version. But let's not go too much in details of which unit goes boosted by this or not. Let's talk about the generic changes. And I see that we have Kahadin that joined us. And hi, Kahadin. Another generic changes that happened is strategic reserves. Before you could say like, is it mandatory to be in strategic reserve when you can get the rule? Is it not? There could have been some discussion, and it has been clarified. And yeah, either all the units of the battle fleets are held in reserve or none of them. And yeah, it means that it can be none of them. So if you don't want your fleet that has this bonus strategic reserve to be in reserve, you don't have to. You can deploy them normally. So that is quite an interesting point, and that's how I understood the rule before, but it's good that it is clarified. There has been very minor changes, especially in the Latin Alliance. We will have a look later for the other factions, but yeah, let's talk about the generic rules. We can see already here a new equipment for the Italians, but first let's have a look at the generators. Some of you might have missed it because it was already in the previous Latin Alliance OrBat, but it's going to be applied to everyone, so it is worth talking about it again. First thing is that the atomic generator lost its bad effect in the sense that it can no longer give you extra damage if you have twice a reactor leak, which was fluffy, but it was already not a good reactor, and this was another thing that made you feel like, no, I don't want it. And now it still gives you +2 speed, and it gives you +2 turn limit, which makes your ship much faster and much more agile, which combos really well with what we just said, that the rear of the enemy ships are going to be more vulnerable. So now some factions still want to stay in the back and just shoot at the enemy head on. I'm thinking of the Union especially, who can get a lot of devastating anyway. But otherwise, having an atomic generator is much more useful than ever. You do want to be in the aft section of the enemy for the devastating, just because it's more convenient usually. The enemy has less weapons here. And yeah, the atomic generator is a very good way to do that. Then the shield generator, and this might be one of the big changes to the game, is that, okay, you can decide to use the shield generator, and it still works the same. However, and that's the important part, if you do use your shield generator, then you cannot count as being obscured at all. Whether it's from a shroud generator, whether it's because you're hidden behind a ship, behind an island, like you cannot combo shield and obscured anymore, which is mostly made to protect, to stop the spamming of generator ships, such as the Koenig or the Hypatia, that could really put stack after stack after stack of defensive buffs and made ships virtually impossible to kill, even if your whole fleet shoots at it. So this really nerfs it, and it's either a shield, either a shroud, which is still very good. But yeah, the shield is much less useful than it used to be, and if you do have a shield, most of the time you will not want to hide behind islands or everything, because, like, what for? If the enemy can see just a little bit of you, it doesn't matter anymore. And we have, yes, indeed, in the chat, Kahadin says that obscured seems better in general. That depends. Statistically, we made the statistics, and if you can remove 2 or 3 dices, and the enemy attack pool is small, for example, a frigate makes a small attack, and you go from, I don't know, 7 dices and you go all the way down to 4, then it's better to take the shield, because this will really, most of the time, nullify completely the attack. But as soon as you start to get to a certain critical level, for example, around 12 or 13 dices of attack if you are a mass 2 ship, or around 18 if you are a mass 3 ship, if you start to reach this area, or if you go even further than this, it is better to choose obscured than shield, indeed, because that's going to have the more dices the enemy has to start with, the more obscured is going to be efficient, and the less dices are in the attack, the more shield will be the thing to choose. But yeah, if you can choose between a shield and a shroud generator, now it starts to be the shield, the shroud that is more interesting. We also have the new magnetic generator, which is not in blue here, but there have been quite a few changes recently. Magnetic used to be the anti-SRS option. Now it still is a very good anti-SRS option, but it also says that any heavy hits from enemy SRS or from aerial attacks count these heavy hits as single hits. This is quite important because it also helps a lot against all the attacks such as rockets, such as Katyushas from the Commonwealth. Like there are so many factions that have aerial uh, weapons that this really is very, very efficient. And that's not all. If this model activates and there is a friendly or enemy unit within 10 inches, you can do a variation of a flag barrage, which means you roll a dice for each SRS token on the target, and for each explosive, the SRS token just is wiped out. So that is that is very powerful as well. And it's not finished, because if the target was an aerial unit, friendly or enemy, you also put a level of disorder on the enemy. So magnetic is really like the very good entire weapon, because it protects you against aerial attacks, it protects you against SRS, you get a flag barrage, you can put disorders on enemy aerial units. I mean, it does a lot of stuff now, and it brings a lot of utility, and you really some will hesitate now between the shroud and magnetic. It depends on the enemy list, of course. What else do we have as a change? Well, this is a small change for the Latin Alliance, but while we're here, let's talk about it. The Solex generator has a Valor effect that allows you to choose a Solex generator and to use it as a Etlon set. Now it's for the whole unit, so you spend a card and the whole unit can use its Solex generators as weapons. Very good for a pack of 3 Chasseurs, especially, or a pack of, for example, 3 Furieux as well. Still very good. One thing about the Alliance I will talk very quickly, because it's not generic, but it is important, is the Scutum Mine Launcher. It's a new equipment that you can buy on Italian ships, and it allows you to put some mine. So far, not something crazy, but here it's at least 10 inches from the deployment zone, and you place them before submerged unit deployment. So after all the aerial and after all the surface units have finished deploying. So your opponent can really put all his ships in line, and you see where are the big ship that cannot evade that much of the mine, such as, I don't know, an Ice Maiden, for example, or even like just big ships such as a Kaiser or Borodino, this kind of ship, and you can just start to put some mines in front of the enemy. Very good equipment for the Italians, and yeah, it gives them more personality. One thing that has been changed everywhere, and it's not in blue anymore for the Alliance, makes me think that maybe I'm switching to the Commonwealth part, because the Alliance just had an OrBat change recently, and if I want to put it in blue, better to do it here. Yes, as we can see here on the Commonwealth OrBat, there has been some changes for the gun batteries especially. They are now much better at shooting, like at supporting, than they used to be. They went from support 2 at closing to support 3, and that can be really big on units of 5 or 6 frigates, or even some destroyers that have twin gun batteries. Even at point blank, they go to support 2, and when they are crippled, and some factions really like it, when they are crippled, still goes to support 2, which is very, very big, depending on which factions you play with, of course. And yeah, just a good boost to the gun batteries, which used to be extremely underwhelming, and now they're not anymore. Another rule before we start to go and deep dive into each OrBat. I see a little question. Is generator ship shroud magnetic repulsion become the best defensive solution? That could be the case. Shroud magnetic for sure. Repulsion, I'm not sure it's that good. Well, first of all, not everybody has it. Yeah, it gives +3 SDV. Yes, and +3 SDV is good, and then you can move a little bit better, which is good. +3 SDV is very helpful against some attack. And first of all, I'm not sure that every single faction can have it. If I switch right now to the Crown, yeah, the Crown cannot take this, for example, but they don't have generator ship anyway, so they don't really care. The Empire has its new generator ship. Can they take a repulsion field? Yes, they can. So yeah, I would consider the third generator ship, the first third generator on a generator ship to be a little bit more like, okay, depends on what you want. Interface for the Empire, for example, is really, really good now, so that could be a good choice. If you are the Commonwealth, maybe you want this Cryoblast generator. I'm not sure you can put it, but if you could be good. Or a Fury generator can be amazing, not only as a defensive buff, but as a way of not letting your enemy charge you, because it's a little bit deterrent. He knows that if he comes, you will board him. So in this sense, it keeps the enemy a bit further away and in a range that is better for you. Yeah, yeah. Indeed, SRS spam could be a little bit annoying, and there was a little balance to find because a couple like support carriers really didn't do anything at all. But then if you really started to focus SRS spam, it could really be annoying, and you were like, okay, what can I do to, like, there is a 40 inches range to send SRS, and then I will take like something like 30 or 40 hits no matter what I do. Uh, and that could be annoying. Now there is more and more flag barrage for all factions, and then you have through the magnetic generator this kind of flag barrage that can be extremely efficient. And so if the enemy puts, I don't know, 30 SRS token on you, okay, that's a lot. Let's say more like 20 or 18 SRS token on your carrier, or 20, let's say, like one big carrier and 3 support. Like you get 20 SRS token on your target that you want to defend. Before it was really hard to save it, but now even if you have just 2 ships with magnetic generators, that's still gonna be like twice the flag barrage, and you should remove out of the 20 SRS tokens, you should remove something like 6 SRS token on average from this. So it goes from 20 to 12, and that's not the same at all. And that's even before you start to count the additional protection of counting heavy hits as single hits, and then you can use your other flag barrage or real flag barrage, and then you have the defenses on your ship. So yeah, it's really a good tool. If you play always against the same guy that brings always a lot of SRS token, for example, he brings like two Suleiman's carriers to every game. Not pointing fingers, but if it happens, you for sure want to bring some magnetic generators. The +3 SDV can be very good against Frey as well. That is actually right. That is extremely right. I never thought about it this way. Let's have a look. The model against +3 SDV. That's absolutely true. It helps against Frey. And you're the first one to point it out, Ivory Manet, but yeah, it's a very good point. If you play against Prussians, having a generator ship with a repulsion field, it could be really good. And yeah, now before we go to the more specific of each OrBats, I want to talk a little bit about how um, what is the name? How the unexpected arrival and deep strike basically has changed. First, there is still a strategic withdrawal and unexpected arrival for, let's say, for the aerial units. For example, the new Chaska Vitruvian Colossus for the Sultanate has this old but updated version of the rule. And this, for me, is one of the most important changes for the for the game as a whole, it was extremely difficult at some points to know how to fight against these ships with unexpected arrival. I'm thinking of the Auschmeisters of the Imperium, the Marina and Kostromas of the Commonwealth. All these ships, if they were played well and you could really insist and have a lot of them in your list, it could feel like, okay, you cannot play against it. Like there is no counterplay. And at some point, we tried to record a game for the studio, and we had to start again from zero because turn one, the opponent didn't do anything, and turn two, there was just nothing he could do. Like he moved forward, and then I just countered the unit that he just moved with an unexpected arrival, and then I could just teleport at the end and do again next turn, and it was just like, okay, it's not interesting. There is no counterplay. So now, first of all, we have Steve that just arrived. The French is here. Yes. Hey, Steve. And hey, Taki. Like, we start to have a lot of guys. Hello, everyone. If you have questions, always you can type them here. And yes, it was not very fun, unexpected arrival. So there have been a few nerfs, changes, let's say. First of all, unexpected arrival, still the same. Round 2, you can declare that you arrive. However, this is the big one. Unlike other units in reserve, including strategic reserve, but unlike any other unit in reserve, you must activate and deploy before any in-play unit, which means that the first units that you activate for a turn for you are going to be your units in unexpected arrival before you can start to activate your ships, your carrier that are on the table, etc. That is a big change, and it's still, I think, better for both players because you don't have to leave 2 turns without your unexpected arrival ships. At the start of turn 2, you know you will be able to go and pick up the enemy carrier to try to cripple him before he can send its SRS token, or you will be able to start to go on objectives or start to annoy your opponents and deploy in the corner and start to send torpedoes if you are a submarine, for example, etc. Really, really good. And it's also better for the player that receives that suffers from the unexpected arrival, because this will mean that he has the whole second turn to try to make damage. There is never going to be a double activation. Like you arrive at the end of turn 2 with your robot, you attack, then you gain the initiative for turn 3, and turn 3 you activate the robot first. So you kind of have 2 activations in a row, which could sometimes be just oppressive. I'm thinking of the Marina especially. We played one time like this, and the Marina has a valor effect to have 2 ramming attack in the same activation. And one time I did this, so coming with the Marina, doing the second ramming action, then starting the third turn, activating the Marina again, so another ramming action, and then Valor effect again for a 4th ramming action, like in a row. So he just arrived behind the enemy fleet and was just like, okay, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. And there is not much the opponent can do anymore against 4 ramming actions. So yeah, I very much prefer this version of Unexpected Arrival. Just if you've been missing the last few updates, now there is a crippled value for the ramming actions as well, for your ramming weapons, and you can only use crippled value of your guns and your ramming attacks on the turn that you arrive from Unexpected Arrival. So basically, Unexpected Arrival and works like this, and Strategic Withdrawal now works that at the start of the maintenance phase, so before you can start to repair, note here, before you can even start to repair, you can be placed back into reserve, and any crippled models in the unit are destroyed if you do this. So yeah, it's a risk, and if you go to strategic withdrawal, you cannot repair either. And of course, the next turn when you come back, you will still be at crippled value for ramming and for shooting. So that now there is a real choice to make. Do you want to stay on the table and repair, and then you can use your normal value for shooting and everything, or do you want to go back to strategic withdrawal and then come back again anywhere on the map? Again, I'm pointed again that unexpected arrival is only for fast redeploying units, such as this aerial colossus or air units in general. The robots have a more specific rule. Yeah, are very much more like this version. So yeah, aerial units now, they come at the beginning of the second turn, or any turn, starting at the second. They do their action before any of your ship, and then your opponent has the entire turn to do their thing and try to damage them. start of the maintenance phase. So at the end of the round, you can choose to either stay on the table or to go back to strategic withdrawal. And if you do this, for example, end of turn 2 at maintenance phase, you decide to go back to strategic withdrawal, you take your ship. And beginning of the third turn, if you want to use your robot, then you need to deploy them. Sorry, not robot, your IRL unit, let's say. You need to activate them first at the beginning of the third turn. And then they stay on the table again all the third turn, and they activate and they just suffer from the enemy's firepower. And if they're still alive, end of third turn, you can say at the maintenance phase, okay, I go back again in reserve. And then beginning of fourth turn, you can do it the same again and again and again. But this way you can really do a lot of small actions, but your opponent has the chance to do something and counter it. So really interesting. And yeah, I think it's we need to playtest this, of course, but I think it's much more balanced. Now, before we have a look at what happened for the robots, let's just have a look at the chat. Vulnerable Stern is designed to generally be on ship without aft gun batteries. Yeah, that's true. For example, yeah, you're absolutely right. British don't have vulnerable sterns, while the Canadians have it, if I'm not mistaken. And we can check very quickly up if Canadians have it or not. Bonaventure, vulnerable stern, yes. But the Canadians, it's even harder for them because if you shoot them in the front, they have ablative pro armor, and if you shoot them in the rear, they have vulnerable stern. So the Canadians are going to be very vulnerable to ships. They can just move around them and go in their back. Indeed. Just while we are talking about this, and before we go to the robots, one little specification about ablative armor. There has been a big change that has been there for a little bit while now, but if you're a new player and you would like to see the new version, it used to be that you removed some dices before the attack depending on the supporting weapons. No more. Now you check the mass of the ship that has the ablative armor. For example, you are a Borodino, you are mass 3, okay? The enemy makes his roll, and he makes, for example, 5 explosives, because you don't have luck, okay? 5 explosive. You are mass 3. Your Borodino with ablative armor is mass 3. Well then, you will remove 3 explosives from the additional dices that are rolled. So the explosives still count as hits, so no worries about it. You don't reduce the number of hits, but your opponents will only roll 2 explosives instead of 5 because of ablative armor. It might sound like a nerf, but I've played against it already, and it is quite annoying when you do roll a lot of explosive hits, and you're like, no, you only roll 1, or you don't even roll any of those 2 or 3 explosives that you made. So it might sound like a big nerf of ablative armor, and in a way maybe it is, but it still feels very good, especially since now ablative armor works against almost every weapon. It used to be only against gunnery broadside. Now it's against everything except attacks that have piercing, rail, ramming, or submerged. So no ablative armor against torpedoes, but it's still really good. So there it is about ablative armor. Indeed, Peter, we have another comment. I love that Unexpected Arrival and Submaroder have been worded in a fashion that reads like I originally thought Unexpected Arrival was actually worded. Good for you, Ivory. You can still playing the same, and yeah, indeed it is much better like this. And Taki also much prefers it. Well, let's have a look now. Submaroder. So this is for all the units that are Submaroder. Let's say, okay, there it is. All the units that are kind of like lurking beneath the waves and just popping up for an attack. So that's for the giant robots of the Imperium or the Commonwealth, for example. It's also going to be the same for the giant squid, like octopus of the Empire, and the same for the Covenant as well. They have these giant centipedes. They have this Submaroder rule as well. And yeah, we have Ivory saying ablative is like a mini concealed, yeah, mini obscured. Absolutely, Ivory. And this is one of the point I brought to the War Cradle team is like, guys, but this means that you don't have any benefits almost to try to hide behind islands or anything when you play the Commonwealth. And they were like, yeah, the Russians are proud. They just put their ships out in the opens, and that's part of their fluff. Which, okay, fair enough. But yeah, it is indeed like a little bit obscured. And then you have the Submaroder rule for the ships, sorry, for the robots that are beneath the waves. And it plays a little bit, like mostly it's the same as what we said. about unexpected arrival and strategic withdrawal, except it's in one rule now. The big difference is that if you go back to reserve at the end of the turn, at the beginning of the maintenance phase, as we've said, if you go back to reserve, you put a little token where one of your robot or creature was before it disappeared. So you remember the place of one of your unit. And then on the next turn, when you want to redeploy again and come back from an expected arrival, it has to be within 15 inches of this unit's marker. So that means that you have less mobility than aerial units, which can redeploy anywhere. But it is very fluffy because they don't teleport these robots. They just go beneath the wave and they go a little bit like 15 inches and then they can pop again. But it is very fluffy, and I actually really like this new version of the rule. It means that when a robot arrives on the first turn, you can say like, okay, I'm just running away. All my fast units, I'm keeping them away from this, and then it means the enemy will not be able to ram you again. There have been quite a few times in my recent games when I really wish that the Oceanmeister could not just teleport back from one side of the table, then to the other, then back. And this Submaroder rule is a nerf on the normal unexpected arrival rule, but it does mean that it's going to be much more of a fun exchange between you and your opponent rather than being an absolutely hard to counter rule. So yeah, between this nerf to robots through Submaroder and this new unexpected arrival rule that means you arrive at the beginning of the turn, I'm really excited to play against these kind of units again. Really, really good work on this. It's been a big work with all the war hosts um, on the Discord, and it took a lot of effort, and discussions to try to find this balance. And I think that it's going to be good. I like this. So again, congrats to all the war hosts because you guys did an amazing job, and yeah, cannot wait to try this. And this is like the last of the big change that we've had. They don't die when crippled. Actually, right, Peter? I think you might be right. Submaroder, they don't die when they are crippled. The state they may be removed. Indeed. And you can thank the war host called the Kaiser for this because he was very adamant that the Oshmeister must not be nerfed too hard. Yeah, and he voted for this, and I think it's a good rule for them because they do want to be able to do this every turn, and the restriction of 15 inches is enough to give counterplay to the opponent. The objective is not that they are too weak. The objective is that the opponent can have something to do to try to resist this. So yeah, it would be a little bit too much if they would die also when crippled, especially that they can get crippled sometimes relatively fast. I'm thinking especially of the centipedes of the Covenant. Okay, this is the last of the generic rule change that I've seen. Of course, there are some changes that impact 2 or 3 factions, but usually, like, we'll have a look at them in detail now. First, about the Alliance OrBat. It's the one that was the most recently released. There have been some point updates, especially for ships of the Union, to make them a little bit more balanced between the Union and the Alliance. So as we can see, the Columbia lost a little bit of points, same for the Virginia, but that is about all that has been changed on this side. We still have the new named version of the Oriflamme, extremely good. I will not make a review again because we made a video on this already. The Italian ships can now take this Scada mine launcher that we talked about and make them even better. They do get a little bit more expensive, but if you buy one, it's not that much of an investment. But if you start to have 5 or 6 mines, because and your enemy doesn't have mine sweeper, damn, you can really bring big headaches because again, the Scudum mine launcher drops its mine after the surface ships have deployed, so it can really be annoying. So I will not make I still want to say a lot of things about these units because I love the Alliance, but let's not do this because we don't want this video to be too long. Some changes in the position of some of the heavy gun batteries to better reflect the position on the actual model. Still not a fan of the platforms. I think They are too expensive for what they do. Nothing much more. Pack Hunter, the main change that I can see is that now Pack Hunter can impact units when there is only 2 models. It used to be 3. And you can use it for a single attack or a single assault. And that can be really good because for a shooting attack, going from, I don't know, 11 to 15 can sometimes be an extra point of damage, sometimes not even. Okay, but when it's about an assault, every single dice that you can put is important. So having Pack Hunter for the assaults can be really important because it can be the difference between doing a point of damage to the enemy and just making like a double catastrophic explosion, for example, which is a huge difference. So this is the change for this. Springfield, nothing changed much. I see that Karadin says Union Colombia cannot take generators. Can't they? Can't they? This I might have missed. Okay, I will just finish the alliance and then we're having a little look at this. Nothing else changed for the alliance. It's still a very, very good boost that was very much needed for the alliance. Oh, little points change for the Dieppe. Got a little bit cheaper. Fair. Since the model is not there yet, we didn't practice it that much, so we'll see. And that is going to be it. No more spoilers. This looks amazing, and this we already saw. Okay, first, something that I didn't notice is that the Colombia cannot take generators. They can in the Alliance, okay, no questions there. In the Union, I know it's supposed to be old ships. You're actually right. That is surprising. I wonder if it's a mistake or not. And what about the Virginia? No, it's the USS Monitor for the Union. And can the Monitor take a? No, indeed, they cannot. It's like 2 old ships, too old for generators. Uh, Good eyes, Kaladin. That is surprising because the Union could really use this very tough ship in the middle. I'm thinking of the Columbia especially. Uh, yeah, that is not great, not great. Well, it is. It is how it is. My wife makes fun of my expressions, but yes, it is how it is. Yeah, me neither, Kaladin. Like the Columbia is much better in the Alliance since you can put a shroud, for example, in the back and still put all the defenses that you could in the Union. Yeah, that is a bit disappointing. Okay, now that we've seen the Alliance, well, it's a good time to switch to the Union then, because they do share some units. The Union has something, okay, a few things that are quite interesting. I need to remember what is brand new because we play tested it for a while. The Union, first of all, has this very interesting rule called Give Them Hell, which allows you to gain devastating for your gunnery or fusillade actions for your activation, and then you gain a disorder token. There are 2 things that are very interesting. First of all, it's that Give Them Hell has had a little nerf because now you can get devastating much more easier on ships that have vulnerable stern. Especially with ships with the contra rotation of the Union, if you can just go past the enemy ship, then you can just make the contra rotation and bring all your firepower very easily on the opponent, gaining devastating. So it's not as interesting anymore as it used to be, a little bit. Okay. However, the 2 big things that boost the rule actually is that you can try to repair after Give Them Hell, which is big, especially on larger ships such as Constitutions or stuff, which used to have in the old version of the rules just not getting the disorder token from this in some battle fleets. Now with 3 dices, you should be able most of the time to repair it. So that's a good thing. And then if you really, really don't want the disorder, you can just throw a card, discard a card, and then you don't get the disorder token. That is not a valor effect, so the enemy cannot try to intercept this. Very good thing. Then something that was changed in heavy firepower already before, but it's worth pointing it again, is that if you declare heavy firepower, allowing you to link 3 weapons together at lead value, and this is a valor effect, so it can be intercepted by the enemy. If your enemy does intercept heavy firepower, you can choose another target because you use heavy firepower before you declare a target. So you say, okay, this ship, the Borodino, will link its 3 railguns. Then the enemy needs to say if he wants to target to try to intercept or not with Fortunes of War, and if he doesn't, then you can say, okay, then I'm shooting at this unit. And even if he does, you say, okay, then I'm splitting my 3 attacks, etc. Can be a little bit of poker actually, because once you declare a target, your enemy cannot intercept you anymore, because your valor effect is already made. So you can say, for example, yeah, this ship all the way in the back with railguns is linking his railguns. Then your opponent needs to say right then if he wants to intercept or not. And if you say no, like if the opponent says no, then you can say, okay, then I link my 3 railguns on this ship on the other side that you forgot about. And then it's too late to try to intercept the heavy firepower. So there is an interesting part on this side with the heavy firepower for the for every faction. Still the same change with strategic reserve, and yes, strategic reserve we talked about. Then you always gain the bonus, but you can choose just not to use it. So it's a little bit more clear in list building. Nothing much changed. Still the same shields, okay. Nothing very different. Some hand-to-hand weapons such as the jackhammer gets a crippled value, because let's remember that when you have an expected arrival, you shoot at crippled value. Something interesting, the America Special Operations Vessel got some points reduction actually, which is always nice, and it's actually the exception that confirms the rule, as we say in French. It has a point defense shield generator, which does allow the America to use both a shield generator and a shroud generator at the same time. So that is quite good, but it's a very specific rule for this ship exactly that does still allow him to use both shield and shroud, which makes it quite resilient indeed, especially with armor 7 and citadel 14, which is not perfect, but when you start to combine it with all the other defensive buffs that you can get, it's not bad. Then we have the Columbia, which is indeed like starting to wonder, like it's more expensive for the Union, and it's worse. Okay, it does not have conscripted crew and rebel yell, okay, but it cannot take shield. Like you can have a Columbia for 250 points in the alliance, and it's gonna be almost 280 for the Union, and you don't get the choice to put a shroud in the back. Indeed, the alliance is building new ship with that design. Yeah, that is true, but yeah, I'm a bit sad. I wanted to use the Columbia in the Union, and it's I feel like I'm just getting a cheap and bad ship that it would be better in the Alliance. Eh. Some point reduction also for the Constitution. We will not do a deep dive, so I'm just going to switch on the big differences that there can be. Those are the new ships that have already been in the orbit for a while. They are not released yet. Some of them look absolutely insane. There is a new focus gunnery that we didn't talk about the new rules. Focus gunnery used to just give you +2 dices. Fine. Now you get +2 dices and you reroll blanks with your gunnery weapons. And it's like, wow. It's on a single weapon, but when you can start to pile up your weapons, like it's can +2 dice rerolling blanks is actually a good boost. And yes, conscripted crew isn't so bad. Yeah, that's I would agree that it's not so bad, conscripted crew, and it impacts a little bit how you play it, but it's not that decisive. You just play it a little bit different. I would guess that then it means that when you play Union, you use your Columbia, maybe even on strategic reserve, to just go next to the opponent and make a boarding action at the same time. Maybe, and then when you are the alliance, you put a shroud and you just keep it a little bit in the rear, just absorbing firepower and not getting in melee in a boarding range. Maybe, but still, I'm surprised that there is just not the option to get a shield for the Union. Anyway, we have all this. We have this, the USS Rio Grande, which seems absolutely insane. There are rockets on this guy with a Valor effect. You can first roll, then you see all you have, and then if you use this Valor effect, every hit and heavy hits become exploding hits, and then you can roll all on top of it. This is absolute madness, and luckily it doesn't combo with Give Them Hell, luckily. But yeah, this might be the most broken stuff in the Union arsenal for now. Cannot wait to see what will happen, but it seems gross. And we also have the new colored now artworks for the main characters. Okay, no spoiler. For the important characters of each faction that we will probably see again at some point in the fluff. Who knows? But yeah, this is one badass admiral. Like that's all I will say for now. But look at what happens with her. Then we have some little typos. For example, this radio relay, the range was wrong. It's been updated. All right. The California now has heavy escort, which is quite big because heavy escort is really important, especially if you attach it. If you attach it, for example, to an enterprise, that can be quite big for the California. And the California allows us to talk about the new supply depot. It used to be that if you activated in range of the supply depot, you could do this. Okay. Now, the new supply depot says that if you begin within 7 inches of a ship with supply depot, you can remove a level of disorder. That is good, as it used to be. But now, about the limited uh, weapons, it used to be the same. You needed to start next to have your activation next to be able to reroll blank on limited munitions, which was already good. But now, if you move within 7 inches, so you don't need to start or end, or just at some point in your activation you were within 7 inches of a supply depot, then you gain back all the munition that you could have lost before for limited. So that is actually amazing, because before it was you reduced the risk of running out of munition, but you could still. And if you run out of munition, there was no way to reload. Now, if you just come anywhere near supply depot, all the malus, all the negative points of running out of munition are gone. So that is big. We have a question. Focus gunnery made a lot of units more interesting. Yes, I would agree. You like Saratogas, but you don't want to buy a bunch of Columbia battle fleets. Yeah, well, it's not a spoiler to say that probably, like, for every box, you first have the main box that is released. For example, I don't know, the Mozhaisky battle fleet for the Russians with some support cruisers was released. And so we have the Mozhaisky, and a couple months later, you have another box that is released with just the plastic sprues. So in this case, for example, the Commonwealth support sprues. It's pretty certain that there will be some box, like maybe all war cruisers for the Union, that will come at some point. So yeah, if you want a bunch of Saratogas, you can take them. That's for sure. I would say still buy one box of Columbia, because that is going to be the heart of your fleet. You will get a lot of Springfields and Corvettes and stuff, and you do want a Columbia to lead your fleet, or more likely the one with the aircrafts in the back with the gyros, so the USS Monitor. And then you can buy some more later when they're released. What do you have? You have the new rule pack counter for the dead presidents, still good, especially since now, even if you lose a ship, you still keep pack counter, still fine. New focused gunnery, okay. We're not making a deep dive review, promise. We're not. Just checking if there is anything interesting to point out. Still, the something to say is that most of the platforms do have supply depot now, which is very efficient, because you can have a supply depot in the middle of the board on turn 1. That is very useful when you have fast units with limited ammunitions. There are few of those in depending on the OrBats, and this can really help you to keep some munition on the first 2 or 3 turns, because your fast ships will still have supply depot in the middle of the board. And yeah, I think that's gonna be it for the Union. Nothing crazy new. We do have these new Vitruvian Colossus. Like, this will really be a cool ship. I cannot wait to see it. The miniature. Yeah, all of those were already there for the previous version, so it's going to be it. Yeah, some rule precision. The Patriot Automata, which is an aerial unit, can be attached to a surface unit. This has been specified because it was not sure at some point if it could or not, and yeah, it has been confirmed. Then these aerial units such as the Republic airship do get the updated unexpected arrival and strategic withdrawal. Okay, very good. And that is going to be it. And then we have the little preview of all the ships. Well, we know them already, but yeah, I just want the USS Monitor to be good. That's all for the Union. That's all I want. Give it to me. But yeah, maybe they cost a bit more because the Columbia, I just realized, can buy Gatling guns, and it can buy a lot of Gatling guns. And if you put it from strategic reserve, that's going to hurt. But then again, the Alliance version can have heat lances, so not that much of a difference in terms of firepower. That's it for the Union. Let's have a look at the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth had some quite interesting changes. It is the only OrBat that has been nerfed, as I would say. They did get a few things that were a little bit worse, which is still okay, but like it was, as was said before, it was too strong compared to the other OrBats. I can absolutely understand that. However, uh, now there have been quite a few things that have been nerfed, and you will have, if you are a Commonwealth player, start to think about how to play and not just put your ships in the middle of the table and be like, yeah, I won, I'm stronger. So what are the main changes? Ablative armor, we already talked about it, but it's a big one for them because yeah, you do have it on most of your ships. So even if it is a little nerf, it is still a nerf, and it impacts you more than other factions. Then quantity is a quality, little nerf. You cannot have a squadron of 10 heroics because you rolled hot or 5 Kutsavs. Not anymore. And the range of the flagship bonus is 7 inches now, so not that big anymore. There have been nerfs in the weapons especially. Let's have a quick look there. Oh, the bonus Slava Ukraini now only allows you to reroll action dices in defense. When you're getting boarded, you don't get bonus to your shooting action or anything. No, it's just you get a bonus of defend, like you defend better against actions. And now, if you have the Ukrainian battle fleet, you reroll all dices in defense or in attack. Little change, but important one. About the generators, the big one is the, where is it? It's not there anymore, but yeah, the cryo generators. Few nerfs to the cryo generators. First of all, the cryogenic blast and the icebergs cannot cause damage to aerial units, so you can no longer do any damage on aerial unit with cryoblast, which is sad because it was a good way to deal with the mass 1 aircrafts of the Imperium. Well, not anymore. If you want to deal with the aerial units, you better take railguns if you are the Commonwealth. And also now there's been a nerf to the cryoblast. It's only 7 dices now instead of 8, which is big when your dices have the devastating, and that is a little bit annoying. Another thing that is quite funny as a nerf is the Apocalypse cannon of the Richter artillery ship. It gains limited when the ship is crippled, so it still shoots as good. However, you have a chance to run out of munition because in the fluff it teleports its munition from Siberia because the munitions are too big. And yeah, when it's crippled, the teleport device does not work anymore, so it can run out of ammunition, which is a little bit funny. Some nerfs left and right. Two big nerfs, I would say. The first is for the Katyusha rocket salvos that you can find especially on some aerial units of the Russians, and especially on the skimming Ekranoplans. The Katyushas are now limited weapons, which means you do have a chance to run out of munition with it. That is a nerf, but you can play around it with the stations, for example, that have supply depot that you can put in the middle of the table, or you can just accept the risk that okay, some of them might run out of munition at some point. But yeah, their skimming units, the Ekranoplans, got nerf after nerf after nerf. They used to be really good, probably the best unit of the Commonwealth, and now they've gotten nerfed to the point where I'm like, do I want skimming units that cost a lot, don't do that much of damage anymore, and can just run out of ammunition? and be too fast for my usual supply depot to help? I am not sure. Not sure. Okay, I will just before we go to the next part, turn on the light because it starts to be dark here. Yeah, that's going to be better. Okay, another nerf is for the Magrail that we see here. It is the weapon of the Kostroma robot, and you can see that the shooting firepower has been highly diminished, -2 dices both in support and in lead value. That was actually on my recommendation because the Kostroma got another, like it got a buff that would have been just insane if it kept its old firepower. So don't worry, the Kostroma is still really good, probably even better than before, but the raw firepower of the Magrail axe has been a little bit diminished. Another thing is that the shockwave pulse that can come from having a shockwave generator gained sustained. And let's remember, it can also gain sometimes devastating. So yeah, it boosted them. It boosted the little scheming unit, the masked one, like Overcrafts of the Commonwealth, and it also boosts a lot the what is the name? The Moskva for the Russians. There are some nerfs here indeed. The Ekranoplan though got some points reductions. Yeah, I complained a lot about the Katyushas being limited now, but one thing to note is that they are like every ship that had Katyusha got a little bit cheaper, which is fair. Then something very cool, the Alexeyev, which is this huge skimming plane, is now a landing vessel, which is very like if you ever played World in Conflict, this video game where you had plans to transport ships on, for example, for landing on coast, this is really a cool role, and it's just such a fun unit in the fluff anymore. Like I mean, this thing just being fully packed with tanks and everything inside, and just dropping it on the beach at full speed. How cool is that? The Borodino also got a point reduction, and we can see something that is quite interesting. We just saw that the Cryoblast had been nerfed. It was only 7 dices. Well, if you have the Cryo Capacitors, which used to just give you sustained, now it still gives you sustained to your Cryoblast, and it gives you +1, so you are back at 8 dices on the big ships that have this Cryoblast. So not everything is lost. And it's much cheaper now. The Borodino, well, it's like -12 points or 13, and yeah, it starts to be a cheap ship for what it does, and I like it. Not many changes for the Moskva except the focus gunnery, which is big boost, like being able now to reroll blanks. And the new shockwave generator, the new shockwave getting sustained, it's also very good. And let's remember that you gain +3 from your shockwaves, and you gain devastating, and they are now sustained. Starts to really be powerful. The Mojaiski is now 240 and it gains Skyfire. Not sure it's enough yet to make it a good unit, which is sad because the model is amazing, but Skyfire, you roll blanks when you shoot at aerial units, but it's still gonna be like, what, 9 dices for rolling blanks? But then it's intercepted by the enemy's ADV anyway, because aerial units have great ADV usually. It's like, yeah, not enough for the Mojaiski. The Murmansk got a huge point drop. We will maybe do like a more in detail analysis of each unit, but yeah, the Murmansk now is to the point where it might want to be taken. And yeah, let's not make a full unit by unit analysis, but yeah, for in general, the Commonwealth got nerfed because of ablative armor. If you have any questions about this, feel free to ask, and if you have a unit that you want to talk about, nothing extremely important except one thing. Sorry, I forgot one thing that is important is that now the Commonwealth has another variant of the Borodino called the Kiev, which is first of all it's a Ukrainian ship, which means you can have the Borodino class ship leading your submarines, which is crazy because then you can attach 2 piranhas to a Kiev, for example, for one big torpedo salvo, which is not the best, but like it's still better to take a normal Borodino and some, for example, some Rurik's frigates if you want to make a big attack, but it's still very fluffy for the Ukrainians to have some escorting submarines that is very good. It gets focus gunnery, very good again. It got Shroud Generator, so it has less firepower, which is a bit sad because it doesn't want to use every firepower anymore. It's like, but it's still quite fun. It does get the Slava Ukraini, which let's remember that it can allow you to reroll all dices in boarding. So it means that this little monster can have Fray 14 full reroll. That's insane. That's insane. If there are other friendly units with a Ukrainian trait, which could be the escorting piranhas, for example. But yeah, this can be crazy. And you get priority signals, which can help you to start your Valor effect better. Basically, if your Valor effect is countered, you can use another card. So yeah, the Kiev is a very good introduction. If it were a Russian ship, I would be like, yeah, nothing special. You get priority signal, but whatever. But here, just being a Ukrainian ship, so it can be attached with other units and get Slava Ukraini especially, and in the right battle fleet, it means full reroll of the fray. That's impressive. The Partusov absolutely loves. And it doesn't have. I thought it had. Oh my God, focus gunnery. Well, too bad for the Partusov. It really use it, but still a very good ship with elite crew and Fortunes of War. Fortunes of War, especially on such a resilient and extreme range ship, means that you will have it for most of the game. Then we have the Aerial Admiral Blomqvist, which is very cool. Like I love the color scheme of their uniforms, and yeah, we hope to learn more about this admiral very soon. So yeah, some nerfs for the Commonwealth here and there. One thing, the Hatanga got a quite significant point drop, which is very good because it was already a good unit, and it still is. You can still make the version with some shroud or shield in the back, and all the railgun in the front, and just use it as a battering ram. Still very good, but then you're like, why the Ratanga is down in prices? It used to be so already better than the Morosco, and now it costs the same. Well, that is, okay, we're coming back later here. That is because the Morosco now has cryocapacitors, which means that it gets the old 8 dices cryoblast, and it gets sustained to all its cryoblasts. So it means a pack of 3 Moroscos is still going to be like just deadly. Makes me think of the 3 Booketeers. If we just going fast, yeah, they did get this because they just checking indirect because they didn't have it, and I just noticed it and told the team. And yes, the 3 Booketeers also now have the cryocapacitors, and which means that this unit of 3 Moroscos, which used to be underwhelming compared to other 3 cruisers units, for example, the dead presidents of the Union, now the 3 Bogadiers are really good. They have pack enter still, and that can be quite powerful because a single attack can get +1 die for each model in the unit, which means you can make one big, powerful 11 dice cryoblast with this. If I'm not, yeah, it's all the units must contribute action dice to the dice pool. Okay, my bad, you cannot do it. But yeah, the 3 Bogatiers, very good unit now that they have cryocapacitors, and the Morosco are interesting as well. And now let's go to the Kostroma because they gained something that might seem innocent, but it's not. It still has its firepower. It's the new rules of Submaroder we've talked about, etc., etc. Giant Slayer, it had already rerolling blanks, and now it gained Sharp Shooter, which means that its real gun attack, which already was -1 citadel, is now going to be -3 citadels. Which means that, as it was before, you could have a 16 dices of gunnery, rerolling blanks, -3 citadel, and all this for 150 points each. And yeah, this would have been like just overkill for the point cost. So the point cost was a little bit raised, and the amount of Magrail X was a little bit diminished, which still makes it the Kostroma is no longer like just a stronger railgun than anything else for the point cost, but it's now very good in a specific role, which is to snipe -3 or higher of the enemy, because it will roll blanks against them. It will be like something like 14 dices, and the enemy will be -3 citadel. So it almost guarantees you that you will make a critical damage on the opponent. And we have Taki asking like, why Shroud and Ablative Armor? That is a good question because indeed, ablative armor reduces a lot the efficiency of the shroud. If I'm being honest, I would have preferred a magnetic generator on the Kiev than a shroud, or even a shield, like something else. But it is there. I think it was to prevent it being too efficient. From from the discussion that I've seen, the Kiev is more there to give a fun little option for the Ukrainians, and not to be just a very powerful Borodino. It was meant to be a little bit weaker than the Russians' Borodinos, and just being a fun list construction option that you can have. The crown that we'll see just after also have this. For example, they have a British ship that can become a Canadian ship if you take the named version, or vice versa, I don't remember. And it's just to give more list construction options. But yeah, you do. It is not meant to be super optimal. And indeed, having a shroud generator on the ship with ablative armor and with mass 3 is uh, is a bit redundant. It will be quite rare that it actually is impactful, but yeah, it can be impactful against weapons that have piercing quality or rail quality, or or torpedoes or this kind of thing. Uh, but yeah, most of the time I would have preferred a magnetic generator for the Kiev for sure, even a shield. And yeah, Kostroma's just being an absolute sniper unit now, like it's crazy. -2, -3 citadel in total to the enemy rolling blanks. You're gonna drop some criticals left and right. The Marina, not many changes, but it got a little point change. Like it's now significantly cheaper than the Kostroma, and the Davka, which allows you to do what I told you, like grabbing a second ship and making another ramming action. Now the Davka gives a bonus of +10 to the instead of the ramming distance, which means the second ramming action will be even more efficient than the first. And let's remember that it's the Semyonov assault bore. It's devastating, it's piercing, it's just gonna be a real pain to the enemy if you do succeed in dropping this. And yeah, that's I start to like the Marina more and more because it does one thing, like teleporting behind the enemy and doing a ramming action, but it does it really well. And then you can do a boarding because it has aggressive crew as well. Can work. Moroskov we've talked about. The Norilsk absolutely love focus gunnery. Like wow, you can now put them a lot of railguns, and they will first of all have more dices, and they will reroll blanks. Very good sniper-ish unit. One or two Norilsk with railguns is gonna be a big threat. Even just heavy gun batteries rolling blanks are good now. The Oleg still being the same. Good old Oleg. One thing that I noticed only recently, it's not new, but many players don't know, you can make a pack of 4 Olegs if you want. That can be quite efficient. They are at 65 points, and I discovered it when some player made a pack of 4 Olegs with all of them with Fury generators, putting you to Fray 13 +6 19, and yeah, that's for about 200 points. You have 4 ships, all of them with 8 hull points in total, and when they board you, you feel it. So yeah, it can be a fun little way. The platform is still not great, but still good to give supply depots around. The Ruriks getting a little point increase, and you can play them 6x6. Still, I love them as escort to Borodinos or things like this, so they can link um, their railguns and stuff. Do notice, however, now, and this is something that is a bit sad, is that the Ruriks, you buy them 2x2, which means that if you attach them, there is only going to be 2 Ruriks attached to your flagship, which significantly nerfs the bonus of railguns that you could pack. Um, I'm sad about this. I love to have my Borodino in 3 works, and yeah, it's just saddens my little Commonwealth player's heart. But it was a very, very good combo, and it feels more aligned to the other OrBats that only 2 frigates can be attached. The Cineus still a good unit. You can, especially if you pack 3 of those with seismic mortar, that is going to be fine, or even the single one. Good on the flank. Let's not make a review like of everything, let's just talk about the big changes. The Markov's Prometheus, first time we see a generator ship, and it will allow us to say that, first of all, the range has been nerfed. I think it was 10 inches, now it's 7 inches for this. And yeah, indeed. And you can no longer stack shield and shroud. And we can see that the Markovs have the shield and shroud. However, they have this special rule, which is the shield amplifier, and they count as having +1 for the shield generators, and maximum efficiency is 4 instead of 3, which is the same that some units in the Covenant have. We remember that the Icarus had this for the air units of the Covenant. This is for everyone. So it can be quite interesting because it allows you to give a shield generator of 3 to ships around, and even Borodinos with this are gonna remove 4 dices, so they're going to become basically impervious to a small damage attack. And since, as was very well noted by Taki before, since the Shroud is not that important for Commonwealth players, having a good shield generator is going to be important, and it's going to make them really tanky if you want. Plus, it has 3 tri-railguns, and but it does not have heavy power, so still really good. How often does Shallow Draught come into play? Do many people play with Treacherous Water? Uh, I don't know. Wombat steroids. I have to say that we've never played with Shallow Draughts yet because we didn't have terrain for this, and but I guess it will come more and more, especially with the new rules for landing and conquering islands. Hopefully, there will be a point where maybe every water within, I don't know, 2 inches of an island is considered a shallow draught. Maybe something like this could be interesting, and yeah, we'll see how it works on this side. And yeah, as we said, the overcrafts got some boost for the Commonwealth. Let's not spend too much time. There are some new rules for the landing vessels because, as we've recently seen, the landing vessels will drop ground tokens, assault tokens, and we will talk about this more when it has been confirmed. Slava Ukraine, we talked about these new rules. The Akula has vulnerable stern, same for the air units and of the Commonwealth, and it's a bit ouch, but fair. And we have this new uh, identification guide. Nothing crazy. We've seen most of them, like the Ritter, the Presidium, and stuff. The new one that we didn't know is the Alexev. Look at the size of this thing. Cannot wait to see it. Okay, let's go very, very fast to the other orbits, just the big changes, because I'm starting to see the time going on and I don't want the video to be too long. One thing that we discussed is for the crown is the Defiant Tail Gunners. It used to be that you reroll blanks on defensive actions from the SRS tokens, and we were discussing like, yeah, it feels underwhelming. Now, when you put a SRS token in defense, you may reroll any. No, it's still the same. Still a blank result. Okay, maybe I made a spoiler, but it might change in the future. For now, it's still you can only reroll blank results. Hopefully, in the very near future, you will reroll all the results for the interception roll. I saw it in blue, so I thought it was changed, and maybe not. All the other changes we've seen, vulnerable stern, etc. Royal Engineers only work with the gunnery quality. I think it was already the case, or maybe it was with broadsides as well. No, it's only gunnery. Fair enough. Anyway, you only use it for heavy firepower most of the time. The Crown has 2 big changes. Yeah, they can, in the Canadians, can now have other ships except the one that are already named, the Protector and the Torontos. So now they just say for Canadians, you need the Canadian trait. Fair. It's more generic. It's better. Some small changes, will not go through all of them. The very big first important thing is the Majestic gun batteries, which can be given to quite a few generators, and they have this insane stat line. If I point them, yeah, you see the heavy gun batteries are here. So at closing they're at 9.4, and then they switch to 6.3. Majestic gun battery are at 9.4. Okay, no problem. And at long range they get at 9.5, so they're even more efficient than at closing, and they can shoot at extreme range. they only gain the extreme range keyword at long and extreme range. So it means that at closing and point blank, you can link them together with the classic heavy gun batteries. So quite a good weapon, extremely good actually, for +5 points. And yeah, I would say it's going to be almost all the time worth it, except if you use a heavy firepower. Also note that the Guardian generators cannot get a generator offline, no matter what. No matter if it is a voltaic action that targets them, if there is a null generator in front, your Guardian generators are going to be there to stay. So yeah, very good. There are some new units. We will switch very fast on the Crown OrBat. And yeah, we have Speed Demon Painting saying that Majestic Gun batteries are going to switch the Crown playstyle. I think so too, yes. Yeah. There is one thing where I think that torpedoes are still going to be great, and we're going to see it in a second. But yeah, first of all, let's just take a second to have a look at this Gloriana. I mean, how beautiful is it? I suppose it confirms that Majestic Gun batteries are supposed to be gold. I suppose, like, to make the difference. Now, it's been said that they will come in a later place. Okay, one thing that is interesting is the new named variant for the many crown ships. First of all, we have this named um, Britannia ship, which first things first, it got Devil's Own Luck, which is huge, and it gets Giant Slayer. But Devil's Own Luck is already really, really good. And more interesting, and I'm finishing soon, more interesting is the HMS Phaeton, which actually has all the torpedoes to the front, so 2 heavy torpedo turrets to the front, and in the rear it has a Trident generator, which was a build that we've already seen. If you've been following the channel, you know that I've played this configuration now, quite a few. But now it has this role, this named version, which means that you get a little bit more torpedoes, and all the torpedoes gain devastating. Like, wow. Like, that is just insane. And if you link, for example, what is the name? You link an Albion with it, and you attach it to the Phaeton, it can be such a devastating torpedo attack that you can do with this, like insane. Then you have the named, this, I really insisted to have this one, I really wanted it. This is a named protector aircraft carrier submarine, which is the, should I try to pronounce it? Saskatchewan. And this one is a little bit more expensive, but it has one very, very important rule, which is unexpected airstrike. It basically the same as unexpected arrival for the basic protector. However, this one, when it arrives from the strategic reserves, it gets to send all its SRS capacity on the beginning of the second turn, and it can shoot all its torpedoes at full capacity. And that is huge. That is huge. We also have the other named versions. I will not spend too much time on all these units because we will make a video dedicated to analyzing the new Crown playstyle and stuff. Just two things that I want to point is they have a new Grail Fast Destroyer, which is basically an Excalibur with rocket batteries and forward deployment, meaning it can be put anywhere in the middle of the board, but 12 inches from the enemy deployment zone. So you can really hunt for the enemy aerial units with this on the first turn by hiding them good within the islands. Oh, and there is a little technical issue. Okay, I will ask you for, no, no. And then there is this, okay, how to say it in English? Guinevere strike submarine, Genève in French, in Breton, which is basically a Washington cruise missile of the Union, but on a submarine with unexpected arrival and also some torpedo salvos. And yeah, cannot wait to see them all. And damn, this is going to be efficient. Yeah, I actually agree. Speed Demon Painting said that the Saskatchewan makes the default protector a bit obsolete. I'm not sure because the protector is much cheaper still, and it does get to send its torpedoes, like twin heavy torpedoes, and its SRS token on the first turn at extreme range. That you might sometimes want to have this big boost on the first turn. For the Saint Michel, yeah, it would be very good to have this option, indeed. Thank you, Exner, that confirmed that the pronunciation is good. Thank you. And yeah, absolutely, the new art is great. Wombat, that is true. We're gonna stop here for the crown. We will make some more detailed thing later. Just we have a little spoiler to what the Camelot and the Gloriana will look like. I mean, cannot wait to see this more in detail, but let's not spend too much time on this. And I will just ask you for a little second. There is a little technical issue I need to solve. Okay, should be fixed. Do you still hear me good? Or did the... Okay, no, wait a second. Okay, now it's fixed. You should still hear me. Yes, test 1, 2. Did we get a new question in the meantime? Yeah, furieux, yeah, it can be, yeah, I guess if you don't speak French, furieux can be a weird way, like, what, do you pronounce the X at the end or not? And yeah, well, French is a difficult language to spell. We like to put random letters left and right just for the fun. Let's talk about the Empire very quickly. The Empire still has its new alchemical, which is still very good. A few changes. Vulnerable Stern, we've talked about it already. The few things that I would like to talk about is the generators, especially the interface. Magnetic, we've talked about, yeah, the interface. So it's a little bit interesting. First of all, you can, if you are battle ready, make a special operation to become an interfaced model. When you do, then you do not block line of sight while you are interfaced. So enemies can shoot through you or pass through you and everything without collision. Good. The interesting thing is that if you did not deploy this round, then you can be placed into reserve at the start of the maintenance step, which means that, okay, it's turn 1, not turn 1, you deployed. It's turn 2, you activate your interface generator, you do your things, and at the end of turn 2, you can say, okay, I didn't deploy on turn 2, I can go to reserve. That is quite big. Better, of course, on ships with unexpected arrival to make sure that you can arrive later, but can be, if you are in a bad position and you feel like you're gonna die at the beginning of turn 3, it can be a good thing to try to disappear and come back later somewhere else. Then the important part is here. If you want to cause damage to an interfaced model, you must pass the citadel rather than passing or equaling the armor. That is quite big because on some ships that have, if you have, for example, armor 8 and citadel 16, for example, it means the enemy can do 14 or 15 hits. It will not cause you any point of damage, and yeah, that is quite big. However, if the enemy does breach your citadel, then you immediately receive offline generator offline critical marker. Just the marker, you don't get the disorder, um, and you stop to be interfaced anymore. And for this attack that broke your citadel, you also get the damage as usual. So for example, 15 hits, you suffer nothing if you have citadel 16, and if you have 16 hits, then you take 2 points of damage, a critical, and plus a damage of generator offline. So it's a little bit risk and reward, but it can make you impervious to small fire, and it's very big. You stop to be interfaced if you are placed into reserve or get in chaos or is in the maintenance step. Okay, whatever. And you cannot use the interface generator each round, obviously, which kind of goes with the same thing as saying that you cannot use it at the time you cannot use it on turn 2 and 3 and 4, etc. So it can give you a very good defensive boost, basically, but it's not without its risk. But usually it's worth it. Anything interesting in the? Yeah, that's going to be it. We do have some named variants for the Japanese as well. A few of those. Uh, this is very interesting. We have a new rule for the landing vessel that is the Ergun, which is a heavy lander, which has when you make a landing action, which is the same as this, you may deploy a number of ground assault tokens equal to double your mass rather than the usual number. So for example, you can put 6 assault token as a Ergun assault battleship. That is very interesting, and just okay, I know we don't have the rules yet, but I just want to read it for a second. So yeah, if you can make if you can touch something called a landing point, you can stay stationary. Each model may place a number of ground assault token equal to its mass within 5 inches of the landing point. And then once it has been placed, then you lose a landing vessel. But we start to understand that landing vessels can drop the same number of tokens as their mass, which start to make us understand why, for example, the Commonwealth has lots of mass 1 very cheap with landing vessel, and we're like, okay, what is going to be the difference with, for example, the Argo, which is this huge battleship? Well, that is the reason. Okay, the Hachiman still cannot wait to have it. It looks amazing from the rules point of view. We have the Congo, which is quite interesting still. With focused gunnery, it's going to be even better. And it has internal shroud generator, which is still just as good as ever. And the interesting thing that you will have is these named variants. We have the named variant of the Ningjing, still the same. It does now have forward deployment, which can be quite insane. I mean, with heavy alchemical rockets, you sometimes don't want to deploy too close to the enemy, but with a fray of 12 and elite crew, you might want, and still very good. And you have this, especially the Oni, which is the named Congo variant, which has an interface generator and unexpected arrival, which means that it has still the Shroud generator. First of all, it's tanky as hell, 9 hull points in battle ready, Citadel 17. So if you go to interface, it means your enemy needs to make 17 hits. And let's remember that at the end of at the start of the maintenance phase, you can go into reserve, and then the next turn, since you have an expected arrival, you can appear anywhere. So this is going to be a big thorn to the side of your opponent, because you will arrive, for example, at the beginning of turn 2 in the rear of your enemy, where you will be extremely annoying. Yes, you will shoot at crippled, but it's still going to be quite a lot. You can do a ramming action with this big ship. You can do boarding with free 14. If you're in a good position, you can stay there for turn 3 and 4, etc., and be just in the rear of your opponent. And let's remember that there is this this rule, vulnerable stern, which means that if you're in the rear of your enemy, it's very good. And if the opponent starts to really pile up on you, you can just say, you know what? Okay, I'm going back to I'm going back to reserve, and I'm going away and going closer to an objective or anything. So a lot of utility in the Oni. It seems very difficult to sink, and if played well, it will just be a huge thorn to the side of your opponent. And you also have the named version of the Matsumoto, which has Fortunes of War. It has this sim generator. It has Inspirational, which is a bit not that interesting, in strategic asset, which means if it stays alive until the end of the game, you gain +1 victory points. So yeah, quite interesting, and it is a source of Fortunes of War. And I will not talk too much about it while we don't have the ship actually released, but yeah, could be nice. That is going to be it for the Empire. We're not going to talk about any other changes because we'll make a dedicated video on this. And there is nothing special to see in this section, nothing that we didn't already know. We're arriving soon to the end. We'll go to the Imperium, which is, I know, a faction that a lot of you like. What changed? Especially Lightning Assault has changed, and quite a few people like this rule. Let's forget about what it was before. It was a little boost to Assault, which it still is. Now, any battle-ready model in this unit with Lightning Assault that makes an assault action gains a bonus to its assault action dice pool equal to its mass value. Supporting model cannot use this rule. So, for example, if you are mass 3, you have lightning assault, you gain +3 on top of your fray and everything. Good. And if the battle-ready assaulting model has an online storm generator, which can happen, you gain +2. So a mass 3 ship with this and a storm generator gains +5. Good boost to your fray value. Morgan asked, did they change how strong Colossus are when they first arrive? No, still the same. They are still using their crippled value for their shooting action and ramming action, and they still use their fray at full capacity. So still the same as it used to be like some changes ago. And then another rule for the Imperium, specifically for the Scandinavians, is Wolves of the Sea. First of all, crippled models still use the battle-ready value of their lead weapon. Before it was just on their Ragnarok, now it's on every ship that has Wolves of the Sea. Very good. It means the enemy will have to finish you off. And then, when making but not supporting an assault, this model gains a bonus equal to its assault action dice pool by its mass value. So kind of like the same as lightning assault. Okay, but on top of that, if all the models making the assault have this rule, which will be the case most of the time, then the assault action dice pool gets reroll blanks, so elite crew, and devastating, which means you can make really, really, really powerful boarding actions with the Scandinavians now. And now most of the Scandinavians gain vulnerable stern, which is also giving them more flavor compared to the Prussians. We talked, the ramming action was changed. It used to be full value, and now it's crippled ram value. Yeah, yes, indeed. I'm not sure when it was changed. I thought it was like 3.02 that it was this, but yeah. Now it's indeed crippled value for shooting and ramming. And still the same for fray. You use full value of fray. Oh, and my cat starts to say like, it's time to finish. Okay, I will listen to my cat because she actually is the boss of the channel. Change to the Langsam generator. Now the Langsam generator is a little bit what used to be this storm generator before. You can shoot it to a unit within 10 inches. If you make a hit or a heavy hit, you reduce the speed of the enemy by 3. Still quite good. Not game changing, but good. And if you make an exploding hit, then the enemy takes a critical hit. So good little buff for units that do have it. Then you have some new, especially the new artillery of the Imperium. We'll not talk too much, but basically they have still the Gustav, which is now 11.5 and has sustained and extreme range. But you have an alternative version. By the way, the Gustav has Hazardous as well. And you have an alternative version, which is the Bertha, which has gunnery arc at 9.5, so a little bit less efficient, but it has blast, and that can be really, really efficient. Let's remember that the Augustus that have this, and some other ships, have spotter, so they can also ignore obscured or roll blank if you make the combo right. A little change of the shock rocket batteries, so the smaller one, 5.2, which is more in line with other factions. And yeah, I don't see other changes. I must admit I don't play the Imperiums. Some points reductions for the Ice Maiden, which is always welcome. Apparently they were a little bit too weak now. I must admit it's been a while since I saw one on the table. Might be a sign that they were too weak. The Ragnarok having vulnerable stern and Wolves of the Sea, as we've seen. Nothing extremely significant to point out here. We will make a little video. Let's talk just about the named version. There is a named version of the Ragnarok which can take a little bit less escort because it would be too strong otherwise, but gets Devil's Own Luck. That is big. Devil's Own Luck is very important, but it puts even a bigger target on your Ragnarok, which is not your toughest ship. So yeah, you need to measure, like you cannot play it as aggressive as you usually like to do with the Ragnaroks if you take this. These are the older named versions. You get a named König that gets command codes, which is like a once per round command override. Really, really good, but you don't get to choose which generator you get, but you get good ones, so that's fine. The Tirpitz gets priority signals. If you really want your attack if you really want your Valor effect to work, you can use the Tirpitz. Very good. And that is going to be it. Just one thing that I know could be like, we will make a little notification. soon. The Hoth corvettes get corvette duty. That is big because now you can really have these 2 corvettes being a very good boost to a Ragnarok. They're really protected good. And if you take a pack of 6 Hoth corvettes, those are gonna be basically immune to torpedoes at this point. The Conrad has a new model coming, and it does have a new options of weapons. That is good. And here is, by the way, the new Conrad models, looking really cool. The Medus, I think it was another name before. It's a frigate that is specialist in anti-air. 2 interesting rules: anti-air specialist, which was important, flag barrage, so you're less vulnerable to SRS, and forward deployment. We've talked about it already. That can make them really good air unit hunters. The Odin is not, got a little bit more interesting. It can now be attached to Valkyrie's helicopters. So yeah, that is going to make it much more interesting. And we have Wombat saying that the named Tirpitz switched Fortunes of War for priority signals. So yeah, a little bit of a side grade indeed. And we're going to have it. By the way, I never saw it on the table, but I know that the Heidelberg logistic cruisers got a big point reduction at 205 now, for something that is still the frame of a Kaiser Elector with logistical support, which is good. Minler fine, and can, if it wants, become a flagship. I would say it's quite great, especially if you upgrade with the artillery version and you get phosphor shell, of course. Very tough, very supportive from the rear. I like the Heidelberg very much now. And that is going to be it for the Imperium. Nothing that interesting to say. Submerged unit, yes. Where is the Valkyrie? I wanted just to point out what I just said about, yeah, Valkyrie Hunt Rotor. It can now be attached to the Odin, and since they have each of them a twin Stormclaw to the front, that can start to do a lot of damage to the opponent. And yeah, nothing special to see here. We know most of these ships, and yeah, I know that some people are absolutely in love with the Imperium ships. I am not such a big fan. I love the Scandinavians, but the Prussians, I'm like, not my thing. But I understand that people see this and be like, oh my god, that's the coolest model ever. Not fighting with you guys on this. The Sultanate had just one little change. Okay, there are 2 things to point out here. First, the Gunrunner is still as good as ever. It's if you moved or been placed by a Mirage generator, so even boosted more. It was already very good on Temir frigates. It's even better now for the Sultanate. And we have a question from Ivory. I'm looking forward to seeing the new frontline and support boxes for the new Conrads and the small shock rockets. Yeah. The new shock rockets for the Imperium look amazing. Like I've seen them, like probably my favorite rocket turrets of the entire game, I have to admit, for the Imperium. What happened here? I do feel like they did not need a blast gun that make you an emergency and the torpedo makes you at chaos. Yeah, it's a big buff for the Imperium. I do agree, but apparently the Augustus were not strong enough, and some people say that it's been nerfed, the Augustus, with this. I'm not sure, but I will have to play test it. Um, there is a little change to the portal generators. Just we will switch it very fast. No, one thing I have to say is they have a new type of turret, the D cannon battery, distortion cannon, which sounds like an Eldar weapon when you ask me about it, but okay. If you shoot with it, and it's a good weapon, let's just have a look at the stats right now. It's 8-4 indirect and piercing, so fine weapon. And if you do it before you roll, you can make a valor effect, and it is not indirect anymore. So it's like, well, sometimes you don't need it, and it gains devastating instead, and this can be really, really powerful. Plus, it ignores shield generators, which is still yet another nerf to the shields. Anyway, what I wanted to say specifically about the portals of the Sultanate, I am not an expert on the Sultanate and the portals, but there has been probably more discussions about the portal than any other rules, except Unexpected Arrival and Submaroders for this newer version. Now, how it works is that when you have a portal generator, you can put a portal within 5 inches of yourself. still the same, and each additional portal in the unit means that you can deploy the portal at plus 10 inches. So 2 portals you can put it at 15, and 3 portals you can put it at 25. There will be a little specification that it cannot be further than 25, even if you, by having attached unit, go beyond 3 portal generators. Oh no, it's been applied already, if there are 3 or more, so it's already in there in the text, 3 or more. However, big changes. You can, instead of putting it at 25, put 2 portals within 5 inches. That is good because it allows you to use a few times on your artillery ships, for example, to use the portals a few times, and then you can use the portals with any attack with bomb. That was the case, or broadside. So if you have 3 monitors with heavy broadsides, you can have fun. And then you can deploy within like reserve units next to a portal. This has been nerfed, so there can only be a mass 2 or mass 1 units from reserve, or the Heritage, which has a little rule to bypass this. It has to be in base contact. Okay, very good. Remove portals once the reserve unit has been deployed using it, or an attack has been made. Okay. So a lot of changes. It's supposed to be more fun now. I've never played with portals before, so I don't know, but apparently we had some experts talking about it. It should be very good now. And yeah, it works how I just described. It's not the easiest thing to do, but we will try to make a battle report featuring portals soon, so you and I can see how it works actually, because this is the kind of thing that you need to actually play to see how it works. We will not make a full review of everything. Just know that Portal Mastery, you can use the Heritage from reserve, like it has all the bonuses with the portals. I will not go too much in details. This is something for the review of the OrBat. The one thing I wanted to point is that there are 2 named versions of the Anatolia, which is very important for the if you want to buy once or twice the starter set. That is going to be important. One of them has focused gunnery, the Anatolia has it already. It has sharpshooter and fortunes of war. Sharpshooter is being absolutely insane with focused gunnery. It means you will do a lot of criticals on your opponent. And fortunes of war, I mean, this is extremely good. Or you can go for the fun and take the Dogan, which has focused gunnery still, and portal focus, portal generator. And yeah, it can just put portal tokens left and right, and yeah, it is just really good. And when this unit has a portal token within 4 and makes an attack with a bomb or broadside qualities or an assault, then you aim from the portal. I just love this rule. It has did you get elite crew? No, it didn't, which is fine, but it means that you can send like your little crew of fighting women, apparently in the fluff, from Princess Scheherazade. You can send them through the portals, just making an assault, like teleporting assault. And first of all, this is extremely cool in the fluff, and it is going to be very efficient with Freight 12. Or you can just use it with your heavy broadside or your bombs, etc. But just such a cool and funny ship, and gives Anatolia a real place in fleets of the Order with a lot of portals, because it has portal focus himself. I just love the Dogon very much for what it can bring in terms of gameplay possibility. Even though if you play a classic Turkish fleet, the Velid Kosem is also a very good ship with Fortunes of War and Sharpshooter. And yeah, we will not say what changed for them. One thing that I want to show is that there are now some Greek units in the OrBat. Only one, the Spartan Dive Cruiser, which has a Wave Lurker, which is a rule that we've known from the Covenant. And yeah, nothing special except it is a little cruiser with a Wave Lurker. I'm really looking forward to see what special rules the Greek will have. But yeah, this is going to be very interesting to have those now. And the final, after all, like the 8th and final OrBat to cover, the Covenant of the Enlightened. Luckily, not many things have changed in 3.03 as a whole. A lot of little adjustments here and there. We've already talked about strategic reserves in the beginning of the video. One thing that is interesting, the chronolith, which is the big thing, the big ball in the center of the Archimedes. Now you can use it to remove a point of damage for each battle-ready model in single unit within 15 inches, which means you have 3 cruisers. Each of them are a little damage, you can repair each of them for 1 hull point. If it happens, that is great. You may remove additional points from the same unit during the activation, but you may discard a card for each additional point, which means that if you spend quite a few cards, you can give back 3 or 4 hull points to very damaged units. And it can be very, like, if you have a pack of 3 ships and you can repair, like, I don't know, 3 hull points for each of them, it's going to be 9 hull points. It is worth spending 2 cards for this, for sure. That's it. It can be a very good repairing unit then. And this turbo encabulation drive also had a lot of debate about how to maximize it. It's basically the thing that allows you with this turbo encabulation to teleport around, and how to make sure that the Covenant player wants to play the game normally and not just pack behind an island and just wait for its teleportation to succeed. Well, this is one of the way. Instead of the movement step, so you cancel all movement, for an unattached unit, okay, you may use the drive and be removed from the play. So you remove the ship, then you roll an additional action dice for each time drive is used by the force. So the second use of the round, you roll 2 dice, the third time you roll 3. It's for your force, so for your faction. If you play a mirror match of Covenant, it doesn't have any impact, it's for your force. And then you choose any single result that you want, except if you rolled a blank, and then you must choose that. So it means the more you use teleportation in a single round, the more you have a chance to have this blank. And basically, you can either be replaced anywhere in the play area, or if you make a hit within 30 inches of your original position, which is going to be nearly the same, or if you make a minor encabulation, so a counter or heavy counter, then you are placed in reserve. That is going to be annoying, especially if you don't have an unexpected arrival, or with a blank, you're destroyed. There are ways to circumvent the blank, but yeah, it might be a little bit annoying. I'm a bit sad that it's not anymore the previous thing that was you have to take the lowest result if you roll 2 or 3 dices, because the blue like counters were a very annoying thing for the player, and it really gave a risk, but it's not the case anymore. Shield generator is still the same. Do note one thing for the Covenant, because they do have entropic generator. You can cover a maximum of 3 dice with the shield generator, which includes the dice reduce caused by the entropic generator, if you have one, which is big, and means that shield generators on mass 3s are not as useful as before. Taki says I feel it's still too powerful. I don't know. I still don't know. You still have a big chance of just destroying your unit. You have to pay for the turbo encabulation, and yeah, it's not that much stronger than, for example, strategic reserve in a way. And yeah, can be counter, like especially if you make a blue like a counter, you go to reserve, and then maybe you will not be able to come back at all from the entire game. Um, it is risky. If you make explosive, you're happy, but if you make a blue, you cannot reroll it, and you just go to reserve, and you're like hoping to come back next turn and next turn. I think it's very risky. If it works good and you're lucky, great. But now there is a big, big risk. And yeah, now you have the one thing that was updated for the Covenant that is very impactful is the internal entropic generator, which basically is a shield generator. So you remove a single die on each action used for attacks against the ship with the internal entropic generator. So that is big. And plus, it still does the same old entropic generator thing, where you don't need to make the equal of the armor to make a damage. You need to go further than the armor to make a point of damage. And yeah, the generator cannot be used against ramming and assault. This was we already guessed, but now it's specified. That is very good. It's basically a cheap shield generator on top of what it already did, and it makes the Covenant ship even tougher than they used to be. And it gives them this little bit elite faction feel that they were missing for a while. And yeah, that is going to be it for the Covenant. Few of those ships got vulnerable stern. I'm thinking of the Descartes, for example. Getting vulnerable stern is a big thing. The Ipathia has this crazy rule now. So we have learned that the ships such as the Ipathia, like all the generator ships, got a little bit nerfed, but now the Hypatia has this naval shield amplifier, so any ship, any surface ship, specify, within 10 inches of the Hypatia count as +1 for the shield generators. So a little bit like the Icarus, but for the surface ships, and that means that the Hypatia can just have this very, very powerful shield generator, and that is just crazy. It does mean that you can get a ship that has like a mass 2 ship with a shield generator will count as a mass 3 ship for this, so removing 3 dices +1 from the entropic generator. So I think it is what it means, because +1 for calculating the effectiveness, and then the shield generator capacity is at 4 instead of 3. So it does mean, from my understanding, that you have, I don't know, a Lovelace next to an Hypatia. It does mean that the Lovelace reduces 4 dices, including the entropic generator, 4 dices from any attack. Plus then it gets its luminiferous defenses and stuff. So yeah, the Covenant cannot use obscured at the same time as shield, but when you have such a good shield as this, plus entropic, I think you might want that. -4 dices on a mass 2 ship is good. And that is going to be it for now. It's been 2 hours already. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. We're just going very fast. Yes, the Prometheus also get this rule. Okay. The Schneider has priority signal now instead of Fortunes of War. No, on top of Fortunes of War. I'm sorry. That is even stronger than it used to be. Like it's insane. The Schneider is insane. It's very expensive, but it's such a good ship. And that is going to be it. The new supply depot rule. We talked about it already. Submaroder for the Myriapoda Colossus is also something we discussed, but it's very important for them as well. And yeah, no new things. I don't think I missed anything. Void Shepherd, yeah, you can reroll. Oh, sorry. Void Engine. I'm just checking because Taki was saying that it's still. Thank you, Exner. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed. Taki said it's still frustrating for both players. I'm just checking the Newton to check. I know the Newton now allows you to teleport unit around itself. Okay, and it was the Zoomina that allowed to reroll the blank. I'm just checking if it still does it. This model and units within 5 inches may reroll a blank result on a single action die when using a turbo encabulation die. Okay, so if you use it a few times in a row and you get 2 blanks, no chance, the Zoomina will not save you. You will not be able to reroll your 2 blanks. You died. Oh, that is crazy, especially like if you start to throw quite a few models in the same turn. Even if with the Zoomina, you are not safe at all. So yeah, that is going to be it. We will make a dedicated video for each OrBat, but yeah, nothing very new here. The new strategic withdrawal for the battle saucers, still very good. Do note that they do not have unexpected arrival, so you're not sure when they're coming back, these ships. And yeah, a little teaser of units that actually exist already. That is going to be the end for the Covenant, and that is going to be the end for the stream. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Exner. Thank you, Stuart. I hope this helped you to see better what are the new rules for OrBats 3.03. If I had to make a conclusion, I would say that yes, it is some rules that you need to learn again, but it is for the better. Most rules stayed the same. It is mostly the more complex rules, for example, the unexpected arrival or the turbo encabulation that were updated to make them a little bit less broken. They can. It's more hard to break the game with those rules, so we are always happy with that. And since the core of the game is still the same, even if you didn't play the game for a while, you can just come back and it's going to be basically the same game that you know and love. It's really like the little details that changed. except for the couple big things. Unexpected Arrival has been changed in a big way, and we explained it in details, and it's really for the best. And the shield generator preventing you from being obscured is also one of the big ones. That is going to be the second big change that I would point out. The gun batteries getting a lot better is my third big point in general, because that helps all the faction and it helps make all the frigates and the small turrets on the larger flagships much more important. So that is also something I'm very happy about. The game in general has been a little bit more lethal in general, less defensive tricks and more offensive firepower. So it makes the game shorter. That is the good point. It does mean that you need to play with a more and more terrain if you can, because if you just play in the open sea, the game will be ended very fast by the end of turn 2 or 3. It is got a lot more lethal. And the last thing that I would say is interesting for the game is the new magnetic generator, which is much more efficient at defending you from aerial attack and SRS tokens. So the SRS domination of the game is will soon be gone. Let's hope that there will be a price reduction for the carriers, which are a little bit overpriced in my opinion right now, because they get crippled very fast, and plus they got this indirect nerf of the magnetic generator. And plus, yeah, the fact that they get crippled much faster and they got a point increase like a couple OrBats ago makes them quite weak now against the magnetic generators. Yeah, that is the fourth point that I wanted to say about the big changes of the 3.03. Overall, I'm very happy with these new OrBats. I think the game is the most balanced and the most fun that it's ever been, and I cannot wait to make some new battle reports. Uh, this will happen very soon. We have a live session with the French channel of the Dingue de Jeu on the Saturday the 17th. No, sorry, Saturday the 25th. I'm checking my calendar. The 25th, we will have this live action. So if you speak French or you just want to have a look at some Dystopian Wars model, you can watch us there. We'll have the last battle report, the season finale of season 1 coming probably next weekend. And then we will make a little break of battle reports for like about a month, because there is a lot of videos to make about the new OrBats, the new boxes, how to start with a faction, the new starter sets, the new battle fleet set. There is a lot of things to do, so there will be less battle reports for about a month while we catch up with all these new boxes that have been announced or have been released already. All right, thanks everyone for your kind words. Thank you, Knight. Thank you, Wombat. Thank you, Taki. Thanks everyone for staying until the end of the stream. I hope it was very helpful. If you have any questions or you have questions later that we did not answer during the stream, you can type them in the comment and we'll try to answer them as best as we can. Also, do please give us a little thumbs up. It really helps, because I do see that when we get a lot of thumbs up on a video, I get a lot more views, because probably the algorithm shows us to more people. So it really helps to have comments and thumbs up. So it is important. If you're not subscriber yet, then subscribe. That's great. I see that we only have half our viewers, sometimes even less, that are a subscriber. And when I say a viewer, I say regular viewers. So if you can subscribe, that would really help. And yeah, we'll start other than adding new units, correcting typos. There are no major updates planned for OrBats for the foreseeable future. Well, that's very good, Stuart. I read on the Stranginium Lounge on Facebook that some people were saying like, yeah, it's a little bit too much updates. It's very reassuring to see that it's not gonna change anymore, because yeah, I think it's very balanced right now. Like there are not many things to say. Like Unexpected Arrival seems good. Most of the combos that were broken or have been fixed. Yeah, it seems good. And yes, correcting typos as always. And please give us a named version for the Mojaiski. No, just kidding. Thank you very much for the stream. I'm going to end it here. Again, thank you very much for staying, and I hope to see you next time. And until then, remember to keep spreading the love all around you.